What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Ticket with Tippett, the best Dynasty fantasy football channel on all social media platforms. Today, we're going to be going through my wide receiver rankings for Dynasty rookies after the NFL Combine. We're going to be doing the top 10 receivers, and there's been some major changes now that I've seen the Combine and watched a little bit more film. So a little bit in how my grading system works. So basically, it's a weighted calculation based on the total number of categories, and the categories will be listed on each player page. And the scale is a 40 to 80 scale. So nobody's going to be above an 80, nobody's going to be below a 40. All these guys who are in the top 10 are going to be in the 70s, as all of them are great prospects in this wide receiver room. For this draft class is loaded. And let's jump into it here with Mekhi Lemon. Everybody's first wide receiver right now, consensus, is pretty much Carnell Tate. They think he's the most NFL ready, the most polished. But I think Mekhi Lemon has all the traits to be a great wide receiver in this league, just like the Amon-Ra St. Browns of the world, the Jackson Smith and Jigbas of the world. His interviews at the Combine worry me a little bit, but I mean, you just got to watch tape, man. Just watch film, and it will tell you everything that you need to know about Mekhi Lemon. He has elite body control, and he's crazy athletic. Just looking at some of his numbers here, his yards per route run is 3.14, which was tied for fourth. All of these numbers were taken at 50% of at least 156 targets, except for two players who didn't reach that mark. So their numbers are going to be a little bit skewed, but just watching the film, I was able to kind of piece it together, and you'll see their stats as well on their pages. So, but yeah, man, Mekhi Lemon, smaller frame, big playability. This dude, if you watch his film, it seems like every couple plays he's making a huge play somewhere down the field. He was definitely their down the field threat, and they were able to move him all around. He played majority in the slot, but he did play about 30% of his snaps outside. So that's a good sign that he's able to kind of bounce around a little bit more, and he's not going to be played in as a full slot guy. So he is going to play majority of the snaps from there, but he's going to be used in a similar vein of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jackson Smith, and Jig, but he's got that capability to become that type of player in the NFL, and that makes me super excited about Mekhi Lemon. And now we're going to jump into wide receiver 2, which is Jordan Tyson. Jordan Tyson has all of the traits to be a number one receiver. He's that Malik Neighbors, Terry McLaurin type, where he can just go get a football. You want a big play? Go to Jordan Tyson. Now, some of his numbers are pretty skewed because Sam Levitt, the Arizona State quarterback, wasn't the greatest quarterback in the world when it came to accuracy. So he doesn't have as much of the big numbers, but if you just watch his film and you see how much he separates, let's look at the separation percentile here. 94th percentile. That's tops in college right now. So he's pretty much at the top of the separation category when it comes to getting away from defenders and being open. It's just that he wasn't really getting hit. So his yards per route run is down at 37th out of those players. So we'd like to see that number increase a little bit. And with better quarterback play, it's going to increase. So as I said, silky smooth, elite body control, and great at contested catch. It was just that a lot of the contested throws weren't really that close. So it was hard for him to catch. Anybody would have struggled with the quarterback play that he had at Arizona State. But he did the best of what he could with it, and on film, he looks terrific. So he's definitely wide receiver 2. And this right here is probably where I differ from a lot of people who are looking at the wide receiver class right now, and it's Carnell Tate at number 3. I He's a great wide receiver, and my ratings aren't that far off from Tyson or Lemon. He's still a well polished, great wide receiver, NFL ready. But there's just a couple things that need to be fixed. Obviously, his contested catch rate is crazy. This dude on jump balls and anything that a defender's close to him, he's catching everything. Like he has a zero drop percentage, contested catch rate of 85.7. So that means that basically the contested catches that weren't caught weren't even catchable. So it's a crazy number and a crazy stat, and it's something that NFL scouts are probably going to love because he's going to be that, outside receiver that's going to go into the red zone, jump ball. He's going to grab it and come down with it, kind of like Devontae Adams-ish. But I have him closer to Devontae Smith just because he's closer to that Devontae Smith build. Really tall, really lanky, got super long arms, and he's able to kind of go up and grab everything that comes his way. And number 4 is probably my biggest riser at the wide receiver position from the NFL Combine. It's Skylar Bell out of UConn. This dude literally just made his stock go crazy up with his performance at the Combine. He ran great. He ran a 4.40. He's got decent size. He's got long arms for his size, and you'll see some of his stats here in a second. They're kind of like crazy off the charts, and everybody didn't really know if he was that good because he played at UConn. Didn't really play against the greatest competition in the world there at UConn. So people didn't know if it was just like, okay, like he's just better than the guys that he's playing against, or is it like, okay, this guy's legit. He came out to the combine and showed out, and if he does the same thing on his pro day, this dude's gonna rise up dynasty leaderboard. So if you're having your drafts, right before the draft or something crazy, I don't know why you guys would be having that. Talk to your commissioner. But if you're having that situation, Skylar Bell's got to be jumping up there. I mean, I would take him as high as the 106 in dynasty drafts because I don't think any of the running backs are as good as him. And once you take Fernando Mendoza at that 105 or that 104, and then you take like a Tyson, a Tate, or a Lemon at that 105, then who's left after that? I think you take the chance on the guy who looks the most NFL ready because you don't want to miss on a 105 pick. If you're one of those middle of the pack teams, you probably have, a couple really good players on your dynasty team, but you're probably stuck with like these bench players that giving you 6, 7 points a game. And Skylar Bell might be one of those guys that can come in and provide automatically, especially playing out of the slot, which is likely where he's going to play. He's probably going to move around a little bit, but majority out of the slot because he's such a good route runner. And his biggest trait is definitely his yards after catch. This dude is a yak monster. Like it is absurd. His yak per reception is 8.2 yards. That is absurd. It's tied for fourth, and his yards per route run is tied for fourth as well at 3.13 with Mekhi Lemon. That's the kind of company that he's in when it comes to his target share and his yards per route run and all those categories. Now getting into my wide receiver 5 is Omar Cooper Jr., another guy who really bumped up his stock in the combine. Running that 4.42 40 was huge. People were wondering if he was going to be a below 4.5 40 or higher. They didn't know if his speed was actually track speed or game speed, and it shows that it's pretty much game speed and track speed. He's sitting in that my speed acceleration rating is about a 70 for him. So with my official rating, 73.8. He plays like this Rashee Rice where, he can kind of go out and run a full route tree. That's the biggest thing I think for him. He's very NFL ready. And that's what you're going to see with these wide receivers is that a lot of them are NFL ready, and it's kind of crazy. You're not really taking any big shots on anybody. The biggest shot you're going to take is Jordan Tyson because he doesn't really have the analytics and the stats and just the general overall, okay, he's ready for the NFL, but he has all the skills and traits that you want out of a number one wide receiver. So now Omar Cooper Jr. has all those things, kind of like a Carnell Tate, but just take it down a couple notches. He's going to be somewhere in like the late first round of dynasty drafts. He might have even gotten himself into the late first round of the NFL draft. So if he goes in the late first round of the NFL draft, he's going to be a top 8 pick, in dynasty drafts for sure, because people are going to fall in love with Omar Cooper Jr. just based off of what he can do, especially after he catches the ball. He has 27 missed tackles forced. That's fourth out of these college players. I think it's like 109 players that we took this data from. So his yak ability is kind of absurd. He's able to really do something crazy once he gets the ball in his hands. But a lot of it did come from his routes were so smooth that once he did get the football, there wasn't really anybody around him. So he's a great separator, kind of like Jordan Tyson. Like he's always kind of open. Like you just never are able to lock him down and shut him down for a game. So the great body control, the smooth and elite route running, that makes him open all the time. So his yards after catch per reception are a little skewed because once you get open like that and there's nobody to tackle you for like 10 yards, that's going to increase your yak percentage and your yak numbers crazily high. So that will probably come down in the NFL because obviously talent's better in the NFL. You're playing against all the best cornerbacks that were in college. So you're taking that number and it's probably going to come down. So some of those numbers are going to drop. That's why I have him a little bit lower than Skylar Bell, because I do think Skylar Bell actually has the ability and the agility to still have those yards after catch numbers in the NFL. Next guy on the list is KC Concepcion, Texas A&M wide receiver, and shout out to KC Concepcion too. Everybody found out that he had a stutter in the NFL Combine during his interview process and his media day. So shout out to KC for going out there and kind of showing people that even with some speech impediments, you could still go out there and become an NFL player, and people are going to make fun of you. People are going to do crazy things, but the fact that he goes out there all the time and, gives these press conferences and goes to these media outings and shows that, it is possible for people like him to go out there and do these things. I just think that's awesome. And that's a big show of character, and teams are going to love that. So I think that he's gonna, overall boost his draft stock just because of the person that he is. And I think that does matter when it comes to dynasty fantasy football because he could find himself getting into a better situation because of these things. So if he gets into the right situation and he's drafted to the right team, Casey Concepcion is going to be like a better version of Khalil Shakir. And the better version of Khalil Shakir, I think, is Stephon Diggs, obviously. So I think he's got Stephon Diggs' capability and he's going to be able to separate and run routes as crisp as Stephon Diggs, which is crazy to say because Stephon Diggs is one of the best route runners in the NFL, especially in his prime, man. He would cook people. And for his size, I mean, he's 5'11, 187, but his contested catch rate is high too. So I mean, 66.7 out of 109 players. He's tied for 10th. So that smaller frame, he's able to go up, and his hands are so good. If you watch his gauntlet drill at the combine, he was able to control every ball that was thrown to him. He was soft hands, very smooth during his running drill. It was everything was good. The only thing that is the problem with Casey Concepcion is that for his size, he does lack that top end elite speed. But there's guys who have gotten around that because of his smooth route running. Like Stephon Diggs isn't the fastest guy in the world, but he's fast enough that once he makes you miss or jukes you out on the route and makes you go that way and he goes that way, what are you going to do? You're not going to tackle him from that far away. So it doesn't even matter how fast you are now. Right. So to an extent, speed isn't everything. Casey Concepcion is my wide receiver 6 in this class. All right. And wide receiver 7, everybody's got their personal favorites and guys that they bump up a little bit higher than they probably should be. And this one for me is Jacoby Lane. I think Jacoby Lane, if you watch film, there was so much potential left on film. So he's got the size. He's 6'4", 200 pounds. So if he puts like 5 more pounds on, 10 more pounds on of muscle, this dude's going to be one of the best in the NFL, I think. I think he's got that kind of skill set. And I think that he's like very underlooked. And I think he did show out a little bit at the combine because between Skylar Bell, Jacoby Lane, and Casey Concepcion, I think he was in the top 3 of smoothest and best drill work in the combine. So his numbers obviously were taken at a lower rate. So it was the 20% of 156 targets because he didn't receive as many targets as the 50% tally mark. So Jacoby Lane, 2.24 yards per route run. That's completely fine, especially out of that. Like it was close to like I think 300 players out of this. So tied 16th. I mean, he's in the top. What is that? He's in the top 20% pretty much of the yards per route run category. His average depth of target is pretty good. That's a solid 12.5 is a solid number, especially for a guy with his size. We'd like to see that number increase a little bit, but that's kind of my point here is that Mekhi Lemon got so much of the love that I think that there was so much potential in times that Jacoby Lane was wide open and he just wasn't seen because Mekhi Lemon was more wide open. So it's kind of like that double-edged sword where like, you have two great receivers and one's analytics and statistics and film looks 100% better than the other guy. And that's kind of what happened to Jacoby Lane is he just ended up being the second half of that story. So the one thing that I will say for a guy his size, the contested catch rate needs to improve. 272nd, and like I said, it was only out of like 300 some odd players. So contested catch rate needs to go up. It's only at 43.5%. That's a big, big, big thing, especially when you're a wide receiver with size and length like Jacoby Lane has. So let's see if he can improve on that in the NFL and at his pro day. Let's see if he can, kind of show people that he can go up and get these balls, these jump balls, and have good tracking skills. So I think that's a big thing for him. And my number 8 wide receiver is someone that I wish we got to see at the NFL Combine because I think he probably would have been one of the top producers. Especially like with the jumping categories, like the broad jump, the verts, bench press, he probably would have done, and he probably would have been pretty good at that as well. So Chris Bell out of Louisville, obviously we know he tore his ACL in November, but if you just go and watch the film, man, this guy was special. Like he is really, really, really good. I think it's just going to take him like, he's not going to be ready for the start of the NFL season. So tearing your ACL in November, some team has to take a chance on a guy like Chris Bell. You know, it's going to be a development. It's going to be recovery. He's probably not going to be ready till halfway through the season next year. So what team takes him, I think, is the big thing because his is going to be a lot of dependent on fit. So I comped him to Deebo Samuel. I think he's very similar to Deebo Samuel. when it comes to the way he plays and the way that Louisville used him. So if he can go to a team that used Debo like the 49ers did at the beginning of his career, I think that Chris Bell is going to be kind of like that Debo Samuel producer. And I think he has that much upside in his game. So same thing with Jacoby Lane, a guy of his size, you'd like to see the contested catch rate get better. He's not as tall or as lengthy as Jacoby Lane, but he's bigger, so he should be able to use his physicality and his strength to his advantage. But he kind of doesn't. He kind of lets people push him around a little bit, but you can tell that the strength and power is there because sometimes you'll see plays where he definitely uses it. So I'd like to see him use that. He is strong at the catch point though, so as his contested catch point is not great, but those short routes, because he runs a lot of short routes and like slants and out routes and drags, if people are on him, linebackers are on him, he's catching the football. So while he isn't great at the contested catch routes down the field, his short field, intermediate hands routes are phenomenal. They're great. And that brings me to my number 9 receiver is Jeremy Bernard out of Alabama. So one guy who right before the combine was really, really, really rising his stock. People were starting to gain traction over Jeremy Bernard. They were starting to be like, okay, like this guy's gaining traction. We're watching film. We're getting a better feel of, how he compares to these other wide receivers. And Jeremy Bernard went out there and didn't really perform that well at the combine. And the combine's not everything because film will tell you more that you need to know about a player than the combine. So I think the biggest thing for Jeremy Bernard is that he is really good, just kind of like that Debo Samuel, Chris Bell type player, and he understands soft spots. So his route running isn't the best, but he understands when to sit down in the zone and be able to use his physical capabilities and use his big frame to hold people off. So same thing with Chris Bell. His versatility is his biggest strength. I think the fact that he's able to run out of the backfield and run routes and run the ball. They'll use them on jet sweeps. They'll use them on halfback draws. They'll use them on Texas routes, wheel routes. I mean, you name the route, and he's pretty much running it. There's just some intermediate routes that I'd like to see him run a little bit better while he's at the wideout position. So I think that's the biggest thing for him is to continue to develop. He's just going to be a developmental piece, but he has the potential to be a pretty good starter in the NFL, just like Chris Bell. And my last receiver for this ranking, this top 10, is Deion Burks. Zachariah Branch was in this spot, kind of like this like small slot guy, speedy guy. But I think Deion Burks showed so much at the combine and how explosive he is that I think he kind of jumped Zachariah Branch, and there's nothing that Zachariah Branch can really do about it other than go have a good pro day. Hopefully the right team picks him and he ends up in a better situation. So Deion Burks, as we talked about the combine, he pretty much he pretty much owned the combine for the wide receiver room. I think he was first in 3 categories, and that's pretty insane. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy for a guy for his size at 5'9", 194. Deion Burks just went out there and put on a show. I think one thing I would like to see him get better at is his average depth of target. Obviously, he's a smaller guy. He's not going to get used in these like deep ball, jump ball, go get him routes. So his depth of target isn't going to be crazy high. But 87th out of 109 players isn't great, especially when you have a receiver that's as explosive as Deion Burks. You'd think his separation would get him, some deeper downfield targets. So like to see that number increase to somewhere around the 10-yard to 11-yard range. I think that would be a little more in tune with NFL wide receivers and the elite of the slot guys. So I'd like to see that number rise a little bit, get a little bit more of that downfield action. And all the other stats, obviously, John Mateer wasn't the most accurate quarterback either. So Deion Burks didn't really have the chance to put the analytics to use where some other guys did. So Deion Burks was kind of like one of those guys that just has fallen under the radar. His explosive combine kind of awakened people, even awakened me, and made me remember, hey, Deion Burks is a athletic freak, really. So the super small build, super small frame doesn't really scare me as much now that I know that he is that explosive and that he tested the way he did. So he moves into my top 10 easily in this ranking. And there will be more ranking videos coming out by positions before the NFL draft. We'll wait and see pro days, and we'll do a couple videos then in between now and the draft, and then we'll even do some after the draft once we know where their landing spots are and where they've actually gone. So that'll be big, and where these landing spots are for these players. All right, so that's my top 10 wide receiver rankings for this point right now, right after the combine. It's March 2nd. We're recording this, so right after the combine, we got to dive into the combine. We got to watch a little bit more film on these guys. So I always watch like, 2 to 3 games. I think I watched a third game of every single wide receiver that's in the draft. So I was able to get a little bit more down and dirty and grime it out, and was able to get a good number of my scale and my rating. And I was able to put together a really good list of who I think has the best potential to grow in the NFL and be that top notch guy for your dynasty team. So if you're looking for the best dynasty advice, go ahead and subscribe, like, share, and comment below who your top three guys are. Actually, no, not top three. Let's do top five because I want to see who you guys have at 4 and 5, because I think 4 and 5 are kind of like the range that you can kind of throw anybody in there. The top three is easily Lemon, Tate, and Tyson. So you can just kind of throw any of those three guys in, and nobody's really going to argue with you that one's better than the other. I think it comes down to fit more than anything. So go ahead and drop those down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Peace.